Before we really dive in, I'd like to start with a little bit of an overview of the option sets that you have after Drupal 7. What I've done is I've put together a decision workflow based on discussions with Apigee and some of our experience. And one of the things that we've seen is that most API teams typically, like the dev portal, like it's really important because it's the face of your API program, but they often don't really have the 4 or 5 people team that you really need to be able to do developer portals the way that API scale-ups like Stripe and companies like that are doing dev portals, where they're really quickly iterating on their dev portal with a team that's fully dedicated to just to the developer experience. Most of the companies that we're working with don't have that team. If you have that team and that team wants to learn Drupal, then I think, especially if you're using Apigee, then it's definitely worth to look at Drupal 8 as a solution. If they don't want to learn Drupal, because we've also sometimes seen that, then you might want to consider making a custom portal. But it's going to be quite a lot of work. You might be able to leverage the Apigee Edge PHP SDK. That's also something that we collaborated with Apigee on. Or other technology stacks that you want to use. If you don't have a full team to dedicate to your dev portal effort, and you want to do an on-premise deployment, then the integrated dev portal does not work, and then you'll have to work with Drupal 8 probably. If you're using monetization, you also need Drupal 8. If you need customization to do custom integrations, to address any of the 11 forms of complexity that I'll explain about in the rest of this webinar, then again, Drupal 8 will be your solution. And if you don't need any of that, if you're good with a much more lightweight portal, then you could work with the integrated portal. Now, the integrated portal has a couple of components already around teams, and it's developing and it's growing. But feedback that I've heard from Apigee customers that have been looking at it, there's if you need something a little bit more ambitious, then probably you'll need to look at Drupal 8 as a solution. In terms of timeline, so in May 2019, the general availability of the Drupal 8 module was announced, and then at the end of May, there was the announcement that Apigee will no longer host Drupal 7 or 8, because there's a couple of Drupal 8 portals that we have hosted with Apigee. And they also announced that in May 2020, they'll stop hosting the current Apigee customers that they're providing hosting for. This correlates with the Drupal timeline, where in 2020 Drupal 9 will be released, and and then in November 21, Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 will have their end of life. There will be some organizations that will provide, longer-term security releases and things like that, but that's going to be a paying service. I believe that it makes more sense to make a switch and to make a switch early, because it's an opportunity to rebuild your portal and to clean up things that you've learned and to make a fresh start. Then in the next part of the webinar, I want to talk about all the different forms of complexity that we've seen with customers. I think probably the biggest one the biggest advantage for the integrated portal is maintenance as a form of complexity. With the integrated portal, you can just completely rely on Apigee to do the maintenance of the dev portal for you. It's a SaaS solution, and you don't have to you don't really have to worry about it. It's being done for you. In Drupal, this has been a difficult point, I believe, especially in Drupal 7. Apigee has had support. We've been in touch with them, and yeah, it's been something that obviously as part of the product has been supported, but because of the nature of the complexity of Drupal and all the different things people have been building with it, sometimes it was not that straightforward. Also, if you had an on-prem installation or you just wanted someone to do your security updates for you and things like that, that was not always that straightforward. So one of the things that we're doing as part of our rollout for the Drupal 8 product is that we are offering support, hosting, and maintenance that includes all of this, so that you can rely on us for this part of the complexity. A really big form of complexity is in the audience that you need to address, this is like if you're doing, if some of you are existing customers, if you've gone through our user experience trajectory, then you've seen these exercises about the different personas that you're serving, and like this is kind of like an overview. I'll go really quickly through this, but basically, typically a developer portal, people often forget that there's going to be different stakeholders that will be involved in the dev portal. You're going to have your support, sales, and marketing from your organization. From your API team, you'll have developers, but not just developers. You probably also have writers or product owners and developer advocates that will be contributing to your dev portal. There'll be, maybe operations and product also. Beside these, there's also going to be the different ecosystems that you're addressing. Are you addressing an internal ecosystem, a partner ecosystem, or a customer ecosystem? Maybe it's a combination of all of this. This is like one aspect of complexity that we've seen. That combines with organization complexity. We've seen some companies where they're like global companies with lots of different departments that are that all have to have their own part of the dev portal that they can maintain themselves and maintain landing pages for example. And maybe have an API core team that is setting the governance of your APIs. Maybe they need to approve APIs and have workflows around this. And all of this, together with the different audiences, creates a lot of complexity around the access control. This is one of the areas, and this is, I think, a word of caution for if you want to build your own dev portal. We hear, like in the community, in the API community, there's a lot of energy for decoupled sites with a JavaScript frontend, and this is one of the areas where we've seen in the CMS world, like also here at the conference, early, like yesterday, there was a talk where basically we're saying, yeah, decoupled is great, but role-based access control still is a problem. There's Java Web Tokens, but it's not as mature as what a lot of organizations require. And this is one of the main areas where we see that we've been helping our customers with. The next is authoring experience. An authoring experience, what I mean with that is like how technical are your authors, and how are your authors, the people that are writing your documentation, how are they contributing to your documentation for your product? And basically what we've seen is that typically a dev portal will have a bunch of different personas. You'll have API developers, obviously. You'll have product owners, product marketing, documentarians or technical writers. Like, maybe you've never heard of documentarians, but basically, depending on how technical people are and how they're thinking about documentation, they'll have a different way of approaching this. Less technical people might want to just contribute through the CMS and just have an interface where they can go in and edit the content and then immediately see the changes that they've made. More technical people might want to just put the documentation together with their code in a code repository, and version it together and have like a pull request workflow and things like that. Maybe if you have technical writers, they might have like a Flare setup or something like that, where they're authoring in Dita or some of the other languages specifically for technical writing. And depending on how you're set up, you'll need different ways of letting these people do their work. So one of the things that we've been working a lot on for our dev portal is to create a tool set that allows you to build landing pages that are beautiful and responsive, that are also constrained by your organization's design constraints, so that you can have your style guides implemented in the tool, so that landing pages that are going to be created will look the way that your brand looks. We also have the CMS UI to help you build different types of content. Sometimes we have very complex content models that with different types of metadata, different visibility, different workflows, and things like that. And then we also have the content that is coming from developers, from a code environment that somehow needs to be published on the site. And ideally this happens in an automated workflow. The way we've been addressing this is through an endpoint that a CI/CD process can send its content to, be it with or without automated checks. So basically what we've been working on in our dev portal is to create best of both worlds, where you can have both automated uploads and CMS capabilities, and you can mix those two to create a blended environment that is addressing the needs of these different audiences, different types of personas. Another really large complexity group is around compliance and governance. A lot of, as you've seen, we have a lot of customers from the financial industry, but it's not just the financial industry that's strongly regulated. There's a lot of other industries where there's specific requirements that they need to adhere to, and that might have an impact on how your dev portal is set up. It could be internally, and could be around the API design and the workflow that you're doing and how you're managing your API lifecycle. Maybe you have certain constraints that you've set as an organization to ensure quality of your APIs. But it could also be around the quality of your documentation. We recently hired Sven Strak, who's one of the leads on Testadocs, which is an automated documentation quality control tool that allows you to do things like Markdown validation, Open API validation, link validation, and even to review editorial style guides. It could be around security. I'm really excited about the two-factor authentication that we're working on, that allows you to do to use a YubiKey, like a physical key, for a second factor. Like in Google, they've been using these, and since they started using these, they haven't had a break-in, or it allows you to better secure your accounts, and we're building this into the dev portal so that, for example, you could log down administrative roles that you would need a YubiKey to be able to access administrative roles on your dev portal. We also have things around peer-to-peer code reviews and security best practices that we've developed based on what we've been seeing with customers. There might be other regulatory constraints, like from food and drugs or financial industry. Another thing that I don't think a lot of people are thinking about right now in the API scene, but we've seen some of our customers ask about multilingual dev portals, even though that it's often assumed, and I also used to assume this, that since you're coding, you probably need to know English because most coding languages are built around the English language. Um, I've I've seen talks in the API Docs community. There was one specific one about Japanese developers by Atsushi, one of the leads of Devportals, in which he explains how important it is to have Japanese explanations for concepts. That if you don't explain the base concepts of your APIs, that even developers in Japan might have problems with understanding how your API works and what it does exactly. And that was a really big eye opener for me. So we started thinking about can we address this problem? Can we help our customers to build multilingual developer portals? Also, I'm a Belgian, but also in Canada, there's multiple official languages, and there might be some regulation around certain languages that are required by the government for certain organizations. So this might be another form of complexity. And then accessibility is another one. This is something that also was not on our radar until very recently. We had a talk at Write-a-Docs London where basically my eyes were opened about the importance of accessibility, even for people that you might not even be aware that they have accessibility problems. One friend, she has a wrist problem because of which she can't use a pointing device. And that means that if a developer portal doesn't allow her to use her tools, she basically can't use it. And there's a lot more people like that than you would normally imagine. There was another talk about accessibility and thinking about different accessibility requirements, even for audiences that are fully capable, that don't have any of these disadvantages. That different people might have accessibility problems depending on their environment. For example, if you have your kids running around, you can't process language the same way as if you would be in a quiet room and you had a full day of rest. If you're tired, you're not going to be able to as easily understand documentation. So things like that might be things to consider in your developer portal. Next, I want to talk a little bit about business model complexity. It depends a little bit on what your role is of your APIs in your business model. For a big part, this is about monetization. But it can be a lot of different things. That's why I didn't call it monetization, but business models, because it might be about internal tracking of API usage for internal developer portals and internal APIs, so that you can do transfer pricing between different departments in different countries. Could be about sales enablement or partner programs and integration with ERP systems to help track what partners should have access to what API and things like that. We've seen some, most of the time we've seen that our customers give access to organizations based on their existing partnerships, and then the access control is based on that. But we've also had one customer that did a really complex e-commerce integration where they could sell API calls and things like that. Content complexity is another one. And this is around the level of detail and the types of documentation that you want to display about your API and where it comes from. This is somewhat related to the one I showed earlier about the authoring experience. But basically, we've seen some customers where they have very detailed data model about their APIs, and that might be rooted in their organizational complexity. That, for example, they need to tag APIs with the department that was authoring it, the business group that is being targeted by an API, who's going to get access to it, and things like that. And that might be constructed from different documentation comments. And then also the information architecture for Devportal. Yep. Okay. This is also related to the authoring experience, because this is about the Doxys code, but we've seen customers where developers in different departments are pushing code to one repository or to different repositories, and then the documentation that is hosted together with the code in the code repository needs to be pushed to the Devportal from that code repository. So then you might have documentation like Markdown files or OpenAPI specs that are hosted in different code repos that all need to come into one Devportal. You need some sort of deployment workflow to be able to push content and to push updates of content into that. We've had one customer where from the travel industry, like a big travel company, that we helped with their Drupal 8 Devportal. And basically what we did there was we migrated their content by setting up a Doxys code workflow that allowed us to pull content for different fields of our content model, all from different Markdown files, Markdown and some YAML files. And then we constructed, based on that, we constructed the entities, the API entities that then got published on the developer portal. This kind of way of working allows you to have a distributed ownership of documentation, to have teams, developer teams, interface with technical writers that are doing code, like documentation review on documentation edits, and things like that. The eighth form of complexity is around design. Most of our customers have a style guide, and they have requirements that they need to follow for their developer portal, so that it would be in line with their brand. So we've been doing a lot of that with our customers. But one of the things that we wanted to do was to make it easier to create a good-looking website without having to do all this design from scratch. So we developed 2 templates in our core product, where we have 30+ page templates for all the different types of pages that you normally would see on a developer portal, that we've already built designs for, that we can drop into a Devportal in the product that we've developed. We can personalize those based on the brand colors and logos and things like that. But we can then also still further customize it if necessary. If, for example, if this type of template is still not enough to adhere to your style guides. Also, like, this allows us to do this thing with the page builder, where based on a set of design constraints that are coming from your template, we can create affordances that allow product owners to create pages without having to go back to designers and developers. Developer experience, this is another form of complexity. We've seen some customers that have very specific developer environments, where they might have an SDK for a specific target audience or something like that, and they still want to have like a sandbox to be able to experiment with that. And the key here is to look at the full journey, both the downstream developer journey for people that are integrating APIs, but maybe also for the upstream developer journey for the people that are creating APIs, and think about if there's any areas where you want to remove friction to make it easier to use the developer portal. And yeah, there we've seen with some customers that there might be custom sandbox integrations or identity providers or forums or other developer tools that need to be integrated into the Devportal. This is another form of complexity that you will not be able to address with the integrated portal. We also, and I know that I'm talking a lot about our product and how it simplifies this, but all of this is obviously also applicable if you have your own Drupal team. Yeah, one of the things we're trying to do is to provide continuous dev portal improvements to our customers as part of our roadmap with the products that we've built in Drupal 8 that integrates with Apigee. One other area that we've seen some of our customers really value is to have the independence to own their dev portal, so that they're able to host it where they want it. They can take it out and have it like we had. The key here is that as a company, we're a privately owned company, and we're not taking investments, and sustainability is really important for us. And with us, you don't risk that the company is going to be bought and the product is going to be shut down. Like we are serving our customers is really important, and yeah, service over profit. Even when it's hard, we have to balance it. Of course, we need to make sure that we can keep our colleagues happy and that we can be profitable, but we don't try to squeeze our audience or our customers. We try to help them and to be servicing and thinking with them. We don't want a transactional relationship with our partners and our customers. And that's also why we are offering this open SaaS offering, where you can take your dev portal out and take it to somebody else also if you want. And then the last one is around optionality. What I mean with that is, like, what features might you need in the future that you today don't know about? Are there any, maybe we've seen some customers that start using different types of APIs like GraphQL or something like that, and maybe you need to integrate something new, and with an open source a product like Drupal, that is definitely a possibility. So yeah, we would love to work with you. All of these forms of complexity are generally available. We've worked on areas of those with customers on those complexities. We've been growing the company, and we've now also got a representative in the US, Mark Winberry, who's going to be helping us to set up our office in the US, and who's also available to help us with interactions with customers in North America. And Agnes Pap, she's been growing as a customer success coordinator in EMEA, who you can also reach out to if you have any questions. And yeah, also if you're if you're an API management company, or you're one of our Apigee colleagues, we would love to work with you. We're working on we're working on a demo environment to make it easier to demo Drupal 8 dev portals, and we've got support desk for pre-sales. So if you want to avoid the complexity that is building dev portals, or you want to accelerate your dev portal offering, then talk with us about that. And yeah, that's all I've got. And then I'll have some time for questions. If you want to learn more, these are a couple of things. I'll also share the links after the webinar.